We built a top 50 website in the world. We raised about $40 million. We had 300 million video views. We got huge traction. And yet, during that time, I was a mess on the inside. I have a trigger around not being heard. If I were to go to a dry cleaner and ask for a dress to be dry cleaned and they were to say Wednesday at 5 and I come Wednesday at 5 and they say they need another half an hour, I might flip out on them. Once I started meditating, my brain, the way I just processed information and respond to people, changed enough that I wouldn't have to write a little note card, like, please don't react negatively, don't freak out, don't get swept away. I literally changed. I have seen and I do believe that meditation actually, it changes the brain. It lets you go into that gap, and it just changes your instant reactions to people and situations throughout the day.
I entirely agree. I've heard plenty of people that share that meditation or the meditation they've been practicing hasn't been helping them. That probably just means they haven't found the right meditation practice for them yet.
Or maybe...
Welcome to another episode of Success with Purpose, where we help mentor you into becoming a more successful version of yourself. We do this through giving you access to mentors you typically would never have the opportunity to connect with. We explore their journeys, their experiences, their life-changing events, their fields of expertise, and most importantly, their purpose. My name is Harry Goldberg, husband to an incredible woman, father of 2 amazing daughters, host, interviewer and interrogator of this podcast, and director and advisor and meditation teacher of Purpose Advisory. This purpose-driven project is entirely funded by Purpose Advisory, which I am a director of. We guide clients to make great life and money decisions, and we do this through a range of different services: life vision experiences, personality, investment strategies, cash flow systems, and through teaching meditation. If you want to learn any more about any of these, link in the comments below. Now, just before we learn from yet another exceptional guest, if you find value from these conversations, please make sure to like and subscribe below, leave a review. It really does make a difference. And of course, share it with someone else who's going to find value. Now, listen in, pay attention, take some notes, enjoy. Let's begin. Dina, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to chat with you and your community.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Well, let's kick it off. How, given your vast experiences, how do you define success?
It's a really beautiful question because I'm coming from the startup and tech world, which I guess you would put into the business community world. And I have a father who's this famous professor at Harvard Business School. So I'm coming from this pretty hardcore business background in family and profession. But it's funny, after I helped to lead a startup for 7 years, and we built this huge website and had a lot of quote unquote success from the external point of view. And yet during that time, I was a mess on the inside, and I ended up taking 2.5 years off. We can talk more about this, and doing this big trip around the world, finding meditation and mindfulness during that time, and now teaching it and sharing that wisdom, paying it forward, you might say. But at the end of that trip, I spoke to my father. I knew I was getting ready to launch a company in meditation. I had thought that I would make millions and millions from my first startup, and I ended up, it'll be in the book, but sneak preview, I ended up literally making nothing after being sure that I would make 10 or 20 million.
Wow.
And I said to my father, this big Harvard Business School professor, I'm probably poor. I made no money. I made literally zero, like not 100,000, not a million, not 10,000, zero for my full time running the startup. And yet I said, I feel full now. We're kind of condensing my entire story into, 10 seconds. And he said, Dina, there's more than one type of currency in the world. And that statement lives with me and through me very, very deeply. And he's right. What did I have? I had social currency. I was honest with people. I was kind most of the time. I did my best. And I had social capital, political capital, quote unquote, I could have raised money for another company. I could have done almost anything. So yeah, I had that. I'm assuming maybe you'd call it influence now. I had social currency, political currency, all of that. I just didn't have any financial currency. And yet I felt more wealthy than all of the other tech founders who I knew, I'd been in community with, and the tech world who made, I mean, some of them made billions of dollars, literally. Most of them made millions, some hundreds of millions, and some more than that. And yet, to this day, actually, I would say that in many, many ways, I feel wealthier than they are because I have found peacefulness and I found freedom. And I'm not living it at 100%, not perfect. I'm not perfect with my actions or my words or with anything, but I'm not bad. I would say on the range, the bell curve, people living with happiness and joy and freedom, I will be on the pretty far right side of that. And with that, I feel successful and wealthy.
Okay. So if you fast forward to another 30, 40, 50 years away, you're towards the end of your life and you're looking back and you're saying, I've lived a successful life. What would it need to look like to make sure that you can say yes to that?
I mean, I'll hold to what I said, right? You know, it's funny. I actually wrote this recently. I recently did a 7-day silent retreat in India. And it's funny, I've studied Buddhism. I teach Buddhism. I'm actually about to, after our chat, lead or mentor a teacher in our community, in my company who's leading a meditation teacher training program right now, all in Buddhism. But I did a silent retreat on the Hindu world because I believe in all of the different practices and studied the Bhagavad Gita. And shortly after that retreat, I wrote, on the closing night of the retreat, so the last night before we were about to break the silence, I wrote the ultimate luxurious peacefulness. So how about success? Success can be peacefulness. Are you happy with yourself, even when you might perceive to be your weakest qualities, as the wonderful author Ken Page would say? Do you feel peaceful? Do you feel ethical? Do you feel confident in your skin? Are you happy with yourself? If you are, that's a successful life. I feel the want for more influence. So I'm working on a book now and I want to give lots of big talks and impact people and companies. Companies are in the end made of people. But ultimately, we want to feel peaceful and peaceful in our own skin. So I think that, plus I do have wisdom, as I know all of the guests do, everyone you're speaking with, and I want to share that wisdom in a big way. So I think it's a combination of this.
So being able to live a peaceful life, probably regardless of your external circumstances, but then also having the ability to dispel wisdom, which you have, being able to share that with the world.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean peaceful, like do nothing. I think you can. That's not our community at the path. I mean, if you are doing that, that's great. Lots of me wants to just go to a cave and meditate all day. That's what the Buddha wanted to do also. He didn't want to teach.
They're probably not the ones listening to this conversation. That's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you can do that, I get that. There's a lot of me that would love to just do that. I get it. Those of us that have even experienced a dot or the glimmer of a dot of enlightenment, yes, or that feeling of peacefulness. So I don't mean a peaceful life like you're sitting around surfing, or not even, you're floating on a raft at a pool. I don't mean that. I mean peacefulness in that you are kind of gliding through life. You're in your flow. You're happy to be you. I had a moment also that same night that I wrote that, where I was on the closing night, this recently on this silent retreat in India, where, by the way, I had someone try to attack me during a walking meditation 2 days earlier. So it was not a peaceful retreat at all. I mean, I literally had an incredibly scary experience of someone trying to attack me during a walking meditation during the retreat. But on that closing night, I wrote a poem, which I don't have in front of me right now, but I could grab it. But I said, in the poem, I wrote about how thrilled I was to be just vibrating as, like, I wrote, I'm so happy to be me, like this being myself. And to, look, I'm not living with that all the time. I'm running a company. I have to hire people and deal with management issues and SEO or SEM. Like I'm definitely stepped into in a big way the modern world and running a company and interacting with a gazillion people each day. But if you can overall feel happy with yourself, happy to be your being as yourself, even some of the time, yeah, that's pretty successful. That's great.
Yeah, okay. And then being happy with yourself doesn't necessarily stop you from taking action, does it?
No, I mean, I actually think it can more soulfully, more maybe perfectly marry you to what you're meant to do. Yeah, I mean, these different traditions are a bit different on this topic. In the Buddhist world, we can be householders, as you might call it, using the traditional language, which means that we can have a family, we can lean in really hard to borrow Sheryl Sandberg's phrase, and we can do awesome stuff. I mean, you could be a billionaire, you could be running a big public company, but you can choose to set ethics for yourself and live by them and, follow the 5 precepts and other parts of the path of a Buddhist while still maintaining the day job. You don't have to quit the day job. In fact, we run this big teacher training program that I will be leading shortly. And I tell everyone, don't quit the day job. Unless you're feeling sore. I mean, actually, in the Buddhist world, even making alcohol, I am not judging that, but they would say to no harm in your livelihood. The Buddhist path is the Eightfold Path, which many people in your community might be familiar with. One of them is right livelihood. So
Yes.
I don't have a lot of judgments on that other than maybe creating arms, maybe. But now with what's going on in the world, you might want some countries to be able to defend themselves against others. But anyway, the idea is to not do harm with your livelihood or your words or your actions.
Yeah, great. Look, I mean, I like what you're sharing because in preparation for this conversation, I had a look on what is there on Dina Kaplan on YouTube. And there were some videos from 9 years ago, 15 years ago, from ages back. And I noticed the way that you talk now is considerably different to how you spoke way back then, before your panic attacks and before your burnout and your trip around the world to find mindfulness. You're definitely a lot more at peace than what you were in that conversation, right? Like you could see you're being interviewed. You're like, yeah, okay, what's your conversation? And like now you're kind of just very open and a lot more approachable, I guess you could say.
That's interesting. You can feel that from Australia to the United States. Yeah, definitely. I probably literally look different. Like I am older than I was then, but I actually think I probably look better now than I did then. And yeah, I don't have that thing where if I'm talking to someone, my mind is racing. And if you were a mindfulness teacher or very mindful, you could tell. I don't have that. I'm just listening. And yes, I have changed. I realized so that trip was huge. That trip transitioned me from, my friends would joke, but not really, that I was like the Tasmanian devil,
Right.
running a million directions, none of which might have been the right direction. And yeah, I definitely don't get that now. I'm living my life. And like I said, I'm not perfect, but I'm actually living so much in the present moment that I am very hard to schedule a call with. Sorry, if you all want to hang out, come on retreat, let's meet up. But I'm not great on text message and I'm not great at scheduling calls or even honestly scheduling this conversation with you because I'm always optimizing for the in-person. Always.
Yes.
Because the in-person, that's real. And so you're right. I was probably missing 90% of my life before, as are most of the people alive in the world today. So if you feel that way, you might not realize it, but you're also not alone. And now I'm definitely living my life. Like right now, I'm talking to you and I'll invite for people listening to this, whether you're walking right now or in a room or outside, like look around you. You might have trees around you or a painting or a corner of a room. That's all real. And the thoughts in your head, those are a bit of a dream. I've actually been studying Dali a lot recently. I love art and Dali.
Right.
thought a lot about dreams, created art and sculptures, and in a way, a whole philosophy, that surrealism that he joined in, but that really influenced, was a lot about dreams. And actually, he became political in saying that maybe World War I happened because people were not fully expressing their dreams, like the weirdness in you, the weird things, the surreal things. And if we could all express that by talking about it or writing poetry or doing art, then the world would be a better place. Because if you have negative, I don't know, whatever emotions, things, thoughts from your dreams, you should get that out there. So yeah, I'm living most of my life with the reality of my actual life.
No. Business partner and friend of mine who was a monk for 10 years I was sharing with him about some vivid dreams I was having, and he said that when he was having those vivid dreams with a lot of meditation, he'd go to his head monk, and the monk would share, wonderful, I'm so excited for you, because now you've just lived out something in your dreams rather than having to live it out in your life. And as long as you can learn from it, then it's not going to repeat itself.
Yeah, that's very Dali-esque. I mean, honestly, I don't think that group of surrealists that Dali became part of, that was originally a very political group, I don't think that they would consider themselves meditators. I don't know, but there's a lot in common there. I mean, I think part of our journey, and Jack Kornfield talks about this, he gave a wonderful speech at Stanford years ago where he talked about how we should have a curriculum of the heart. I think a lot of the issues that we have, whether it's interpersonal, you with a friend, a family member, a colleague, whatever that is, a lot of the tough things in relationships are about us either not being able to be with our own difficult emotions or thoughts, or not being able to be with somebody else's difficult emotions and thoughts. And part of the mindfulness journey is about opening your ability, expanding your ability to be with your own tough emotions and to be with someone else's. And what a gift to yourself and others to have that ability.
Well, that's a really important point. I'm sure you've seen it, right? You've been teaching meditation for ages now. What we've been finding, I'm curious if you're finding the exact same thing. I'm sure you are. We find that as soon as people start meditating in the right way, they start noticing what comes up. They start noticing it in the moment, and then they don't feel like they have to react to it immediately. They see something, which maybe it's what someone else has done, which has triggered them, and usually that's unconscious. And then they take that in, they go, oh, hang on, I'm just noticing that I've got some resistance to this right now. And then even without having to do anything about it, it means that they don't react. It means that they don't escalate the conflict. It means that usually the conflict kind of just dissipates, but at the very least, it doesn't get worse. I'm guessing you found the same thing, right?
Yeah, it's everything. I actually have even coined that. I would call that pause there at the gap. That's my own language, but you can feel free to practice that in your life. And I think it's a skill and an incredible tool to be able to bring awareness to the gap and to pause in that gap. And from there, you can choose how you want to respond to something. There's something else that I'm going to start writing about. This will be in the book, and I might write an article about it. But there's this state that we can get in when we're triggered. NPR did a wonderful segment on this, and they called it being hot. So it's not necessarily physically hot, right? But you're hot. I mean, you know it afterwards, at least, when you're triggered, whenever that trigger is. So you're in it. You are, in a way, I don't want to say you're going insane. That's not quite right. You have lost control over your ability to choose how you want to respond. So if we could find the gap, even when you're, quote, hot, or I'm going to call it swept up, swept away, you can find your mindfulness, and I guess the Brits would say mind the gap. I don't know if there's too much Australian British tension for me to bring up the British without that being triggering, Harry, but if that's allowed. So if you can bring awareness to when you're swept up, swept away, that's going to open up a lot more avenues to freedom for you.
Yeah, it's in that very moment, right? I find a lot of people making the mistake with meditation and mindfulness is that they think that they can practice their meditation once a day and that's it. It's like, it's almost like, that's why they'll say, yeah, my yoga is my meditation, my run is my meditation. It's like, yeah, well, you can do that. You can live life perfectly for 1 hour in your day, or peacefully for 1 hour, and then you can do the next 23 hours living life the complete opposite way, right?
I don't agree with that, actually, because
Okay.
I don't know if you're coming from the Vedic side or the mantra meditation, TM, call it whatever you would like, that in that world where the wisdom is coming from the Vedas, from the Hindu world, the suggestion is usually to meditate for 20 minutes twice a day when you're starting, and then after you have your advanced mantras, you're meditating on mantra, and after you get your advanced mantras, it might be 23 minutes or 24 or something like that twice a day. In the Buddhist world, we're not so strict like that, and so we would say it's fine. In fact, in our meditation teacher training program, we would have people meditate for 25 minutes once a day. I think it's fine to meditate once a day, and it probably varies by person how much you need to be able to pause in the gap or mind the gap, to use the British expression. Yeah. So I think it's fine. I'm fine with once a day. I think.
I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you about once a day. Once a day is fine, right? But that time which you're spending to practice is that you got to focus on what you're actually practicing. A lot of people, they use that moment as an escape from their life, rather than using that moment as cultivating the skill to, as what you're saying, when you're getting hot or swept up, that you can pause at the gap, right? Like there's not much point. Like there you go, I'm quoting you. You're having fun.
Oh my God.
If you're having, like if your meditation practice is limiting the experience of peace that you're feeling just to the times that you're meditating in that once a day, that's perfectly fine. But it's not influencing other areas of your life intentionally, as in like if it's not helping you bring more awareness to those moments where you're actually triggered throughout the day, then in many ways it's limited to that part of your life, right?
I am not sure I agree with you. I mean, I'm open to having a conversation about this 1,000.
I love your thoughts.
From what I have experienced and from teaching a lot of teachers who are then out there teaching others, look, we know that meditation changes the brain, right?
Yes.
You know this. If you were to take a fMRI or an image of the brain before someone starts meditating, and then let's say they do 9 minutes or more of mindfulness meditation every day for 2 months, the science has shown that your brain will literally look different. There'll be more gray matter in the prefrontal cortex at the front of the brain, which is helping you to regulate emotions. So certainly what I've experienced is, let's say I want to change a behavior. Let's say, and this is, we're getting into it here, Harry. So it used to be, I have a trigger around not being heard or people not thinking I'm important. I think it comes from this perception that my parents were busy when I was growing up, which of course they were, because they were raising me and working and raising my sister and involved in a lot of local organizations, etc. So if I were to go to a dry cleaner and ask for a dress to be dry cleaned, and they were to say Wednesday at 5, and I come Wednesday at 5, and they say they need another half an hour, I might flip out on that. Like, oh, did you not, maybe I needed it Wednesday at 5. Did you not listen to me that I needed it Wednesday at 5? Like, I don't understand. Am I not important enough for you to bring this dress? I mean, I would really lose it. I was kind of the definition of swept up. Once I started meditating, my brain, the way I just processed information and respond to people, changed enough that I didn't need to write a note on an index card that would say 5:05 is okay. Or be flexible when the waiter puts more tomatoes on rather than leaving off the tomatoes in the sandwich that I just ordered. I wouldn't have to write a little note card like, please don't react negatively, don't freak out, don't get swept away. I just changed. I literally changed. I mean, in fact, I'll tell you, during that trip, I came back to New York for some reason or another. I don't remember why, but I was on this big journey. I'd done 2 Vipassana 12-day silent retreats. I was meditating hours a day. I was really, really in it. And during that time, I came to New York. I love to go dancing. So I got a group of friends together, and we were dancing at Tao, I think it was. It's kind of hipster meatpacking club. And we're dancing, and we're having a good time. I think it was somebody's birthday or something of the sort. And there was a guard there. It's kind of like a bouncer for this area where people were dancing, who kept encroaching in on us and saying, hey, you guys, you can't be here. I need to keep this area clear. And my friends were getting very annoyed. I could tell that one of them was about to yell at this guard. And my instant reaction, literally without working on it, just in my mind was, wow, that must be a really tough job to have. This job must be really hard. And one of my friends, I don't know if we're allowed to swear on this, but she snapped her head around and she said, you're so bleeping compassionate. She didn't say bleeping. She said a swear word. And I realized in that moment, wow, my brain has really changed, because the tech founder, Dina girl, a few years earlier would have, elbowed him out and say, hey, we're here, we're dancing, get out of our way. And now my brain just instantly went to compassion. Like, it must be so hard for this guy that needs to keep this area clear. And he's had these women trying to have fun dancing there. So I have seen, and I do believe that meditation actually, it changes the brain. It lets you go into that gap. And it just changes your instant reactions to people and situations throughout the day.
Yeah, I agree with you. I entirely agree. I've heard plenty of people that share that meditation, or the meditation they've been practicing, hasn't been helping them. And it probably just means they haven't found the right meditation practice for them yet.
Or maybe, is it possible that they're not meditating every day?
Possibly. So is that something that you see as really important, meditating every day?
I mean, unfortunately, until we have the tech hackaroos that figure out the binaural beats or some way to fast our enlightenment. I know I have lots of friends that are working on that. I think it's called the trans tech community. Until we get there, fast tracking our enlightenment, it's a practice, right? My own company is called The Path. I think it is, unfortunately, a path. And if you're meditating every day and miss a day or 2 or 3, then you're fine. I actually think of it like food. I had to go when I wanted to get my body healthy. I think we're all different, but for me, my body is not served by, sadly, sugar, gluten, soy, dairy, all of these things. So I had to do about, I'm not talking exactly, but let's say around 6 years with none of that ever. And I think ever.
Yep.
And while I was on that, kind of like a cleansing of my body, while I was on that, if I had a piece of pizza and ice cream, I think in Europe, the food, or maybe in Australia too, is a little better. In the US, we have a lot of processed food. So if I were to have something that was processed, or with some of these things that weren't good for me, I would get sick. I would get the flu. I don't think the actual thing made me sick, but it would reduce my immunity. It would cause inflammation in my body. That would reduce my immunity, and I'd be more susceptible to get a cold or a flu that otherwise I could fight off. So now, last night's a good example. Not to place us in time here, but I guess we exist in time. I went to a Super Bowl party last night, and I was cooking, and I made terrible food. I was kind of helping out a friend, and so we made this breaded chicken thing, which I would never eat, and a pasta. And I ate that. I ate such bad food. Then I had ice cream cake with someone's birthday. And I woke up this morning, did not feel great, but I'm able to hold it, right? Like, I'm able to have a very nice, beautiful conversation with you and get tons of work done today, because my body is just primed for that. Like, I'm mostly clean, so I can take a day off and I'm okay. I think the same is true with meditation. You can take a few days off if you have a regular practice, but you have to have that baseline of, I'm usually meditating every day, or for months of the year, most of the months of the year, I'm meditating every day. And that's when you won't get swept up or lose that freedom in the gap, unless you're with your family. And then it won't happen.
Right. Well, that's an important point, right? I mean, I'll ask you more about benefits of meditation, but maybe also through this question. Like, you obviously got completely burnt out when you're back as a tech founder, and you were doing all this stuff to make millions and didn't make a single cent, but you're working your ass off, and clearly you're spinning your wheels, but you weren't getting that much traction. What would you have done differently now if you had the skills you have today, but you found yourself still COO at Blip TV?
Good memory. Thank you for listening. Everyone says I come from the corporate world. Like, it's a startup, not the corporate world. So thank you for listening. I wouldn't say we didn't get much traction. We got huge traction. We built a top 50 website in the world. We raised about $40 million. We had I think it was 300 million video views a month. I think that was the metric. We built a big site. It was definitely a big site and a real company. I wouldn't say that we were spinning our wheels and not having traction at all, actually. But maybe what you're saying is that I'm not very new age, but now I'm going to say it's like new age, so forgive me. I didn't hold my center in that time. I mean, I would say what I didn't do was be successful at being myself. I was very much playing a role. So I know I've actually thought about that. If I were in that role right now, I would hire someone excellent underneath me who would handle all my emails. Just boom, take that off. So that working, quote unquote, working would not equate to answer emails. I wouldn't be allowed to do that. I would have to be proactive. And I had someone under me, but my co-founder wouldn't let me fire her. It was like a whole mess, but I would have stood in my power. And I would have actually said, we had all these people that wanted to buy the company. And those huge companies that all of us would know those names, would make an offer, and my co-founder would say, oh, no, sorry, we're waiting for the $1 billion exit. So we would say no to a $240 million offer or something in the hundreds of millions. So I would have spoken up for myself. I need a team. We were at this point in the company where there were 5 co-founders and whatever, X number of managers, all the managers of the different departments. I was the only manager that was running 7 departments by myself: business development, finance, accounting, on and on, PR, et cetera, HR. I was running all that without a single direct report. So I would have demanded a team. I would have demanded to have, like I said, someone under me that was handling all of the reactionary work, or most of it. And I would be proactive in terms of thinking strategically for the company. And I would have said to sell the company, right? I mean, it'll be in the book. You'll be the first to know, Harry, because I haven't written about this or talked about this before. But with all these offers, I would have said, we have 5 founders of this company. We're 7 years in. We are exhausted. Let's make some money and get out of it and move on to the next win. And then I probably would have gone and become a big VC at one of the big venture capital firms, because at the time it was definitely one of the most prominent women founders in the country, if not maybe the most, certainly on the east coast of the United States. So I would have had a lot of opportunities there to move on to venture, maybe even private equity. I don't think I would have been as happy as I am now, so I'll still count my successes more, but I would have done a much better job of playing the role of being myself.
And how did you end up being the only one of the founders, or the only one of the directors who was basically taking on more load than anyone else? How did that happen?
Taking on more and the only one without a whole staff underneath me.
Right.
Yeah, it was insecurity. It was people pleasing. I have this very strong people pleasing side that comes from having been bullied. We didn't have that word back then when I was growing up, and being bullied really badly as a little kid, and telling myself as a little tyke at summer camp after being bullied for a whole summer, I will never be the reject again. I want to hone my personality so finely that I will be popular for the rest of my life. And that became the goal. I wrapped my whole personality around this goal of being liked. And by the way, that worked great. I mean, in terms of, that was successful for me in high school, successful for me in college, successful for me in many ways until I co-founded a company. And you cannot be people pleasing and manage because I am smart in the sense that I know when people are not doing a good job at their job. So people, let's say I hire someone to do social media for us and they're not doing a good job. I cannot tell them that because I still want them to like me. And that is more important than that person doing a good job. So they would know they're not doing a good job, but I couldn't say it. And there was that cognitive dissonance where they knew that I thought something, but I wasn't. My words didn't match what my probably expression was conveying. And it made everyone uncomfortable. So I lost a lot of power within the company. I was very popular outside the company, very unpopular in the company. Because over time, spending a lot of time with someone who's not authentic is jarring. It's kind of yucky. Like we'd probably all rather be with someone who has a really abrasive personality. If you think of your kind of typical New Yorker from the films or TV, we'd probably all rather be with that person than with someone who says one thing and does another. Like they say something that it's not authentic. I think people, my co-founder of The Path, actually, who now lives in Australia, and I think he runs a meditation studio there, Charlie Knowles, he says people crave authenticity, and I think he's right about that.
Mm. I mean, like, especially with what you were sharing before about you needed people to hear you and listen to you. And then if you're not being authentic, you're not saying what you're actually thinking. And then there's no way that they're going to hear you either way. You're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're setting yourself up for failure.
Oh, that's amazing that you noticed that. Yes, I was such a difficult person to be friends with. I mean, I was nice. And actually people used to say, wow, she seems too nice. Like it seems inauthentic. That was authentic. I actually was nice. But for example, I traveled with my closest guide friend at the time during my big trip, and we were in India, and we were near Kerala in the south of India. And I, with all my heart and soul, wanted to see the tea plantations. Doesn't that sound nice? And I kept trying to hint at it, and he said, no, let's go on safari, or let's go to, there's some town like Cochin, a beautiful town. And so I kept hinting at it, but I never said, I really want to go see the tea plantation. So I kept wanting him to get there. He never did. We ended up not going. We go to the town instead. I'm so mad. I'm furious. And he's like bewildered. What's going on? Like, I thought this is where you wanted to go. Like, all I wanted to do was go to the tea plantations. And he said, why didn't you just tell me that? Girl. Because I guess deep down, I didn't think I was worthy of taking us off track, even though we weren't really off track of anything. Yeah. It was like, it's maddening. It's probably not to go into gender stereotypes, but gender stereotype wise, let's say you have a man that wants to please someone that he's dating, and that person doesn't say whether they want Italian food or Thai food or Japanese food. So that person is just guessing, and it's maddening. Just tell me, what do you want? You want Italian? Great. We'll go get Italian.
Well, what have you found the main reason people don't actually say what they want is?
I think it could be a sense of indecision, which I have a whole theory about, which I actually think I had someone on a retreat that I was leading in Panarea, my favorite place in the world, in Italy, say she thought her biggest weakness was being indecisive. But I actually love being around indecisive people because I'm not overly demanding, I don't think, but I always have ideas, especially with travel. So if I'm traveling with someone who's indecisive, that's freaking awesome because then we'll go to the restaurant I want to go to and we'll go see the tea plantation. So I think indecision can actually be a really, really beautiful quality. So it's either indecision or if you're like me, God, what's the deep, deep, deep stuff of why I couldn't express myself? It's probably a deep feeling of unworthiness. Like I am not worthy of speaking my mind. It probably goes down to that little girl that felt so rejected and bullied in summer camp. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to stick my neck out. I guess in Australia, we call it the tall poppy syndrome or something.
Yep.
So I don't want to be that tall poppy. I just kind of want to go with the flow. I want to be liked. I want to be like a bull. And with that, I am going to optimize for what I think you want. I used to do that all the time. I would optimize really, really hard for what I thought somebody else wanted. So it was the worst of all worlds, as actually you picked up on here, but most people do not. People thought I was demanding, but then I also never got what I wanted. Nor because I'm advocating really hard for what I thought they wanted, but it turns out they didn't want that. So yeah, demanding and not getting what I demand.
Yeah, it would be similarly. You probably had the same experience. People thought you had a hell of a lot of money and you're making bucket loads and super successful, and you actually had nothing to your name, and you probably had to feel like you couldn't share that or express it effectively either. Because you're like, oh, no, I'm supposed to be the really successful one. I can't be telling people that we haven't made any money from this thing. And that probably would just create more stress for you, I'd imagine.
No, I don't know. I think in the US, at least, it would be, you would never ask someone, like, how much money do you have? You would never, ever do that. I don't know. I don't know if that ever came up. I mean, it's definitely true even now because the path, and I run this very beautiful retreat called Mela. And many of the people in our community, and certainly many people in the Mela community, are very, very, very successful. So I'm surrounded by very successful people. But I think that's I feel fine with that. Yeah, it's funny. I had one very, very good friend say, "Oh, I don't want to go to Mela because I don't know if I'm going to sound as impressive to the other people that will be there, and I don't want to feel insecure." That part I don't have. Like, I will push and shove my way into the fanciest of events. I even was speaking at another event. It was next to Davos, and they drove me to Davos. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go to Davos. And so I did. I mean, I didn't have the badge, but yeah, I went to all the parties because I'm like, well, I'll be fun. Because I guess maybe because I did, maybe this is embarrassing. This is something no Australian would ever say, Harry. But I think I did hone my personality so finely to be popular that I did most of the time teach myself to be charming. So if I need to be, I can be charming. So I'll think, of course they want me there. I'll be charming. Not every fight feels this way. By the way, I don't want you, I'm not standing here. I'm not sitting here and saying I'm the most charming person in the world. I certainly can turn it on. And I certainly, other than in this podcast type of situation, never need to talk about myself ever. So I'm a very good listener. I'm very good at asking questions because I also used to be a journalist. So yeah, I'll fight my way into any cool party and assume that everyone's happy to happy to.
I think that's an important thing which you just touched on, is that a lot of people wish that they didn't have particular aspects of their persona or their conditioning or their character that they do have, and they wish they didn't have it because they see it as a cause of problem in their life.
Yeah.
And they often then start feeling some sort of regret or resentment towards having that when they look back on earlier on in their life. But at the end of the day, like, I'd imagine part of the reason for your success with the path is that you've had all of these other experiences that have built up various aspects of your skill set, including soft skills or social skills, to be able to influence others to improve their lives. Would that be fair to say?
It's a great question. I think, honestly, I am probably a better writer and meditation teacher than I am startup founder. And somehow, I'm not sure how and why. I mean, I know why it happened, but when I left Blip, thank you for remembering that, the one thing I knew I never wanted to do ever again for the rest of my life was run a company. And that is the one thing that I'm doing right now. Is I happen to be in the field of mindfulness, but I'm still running a company. I think that my skills cut probably positive and negative for that. Yes, I can be great at getting people excited about things. And I do think this is a weird thing to say. This is so not an Aussie thing to say, but I'm probably a very, very strong meditation teacher. And part of that might be having been in the tech world and knowing how to explain very difficult concepts in a very straightforward and easy to understand way. I have a lot of compassion and empathy. And Frank Luntz once wrote a book called Great American Pollsters called It's Not What You Say, It's What People Hear. I most of the time will hear what people hear, not just what I'm saying. So that's a skill. I have that. In terms of staying very disciplined about checking your Google Analytics every day and having everyone at the exact right spot in your company in the right role, like all of those really managerial things that my father's colleagues teach so excellently at Harvard Business School. I don't think that's well suited to my personality. Probably meant to be a writer, so meant to just teach meditation and write. But the path is, I've been wondering, like, what would the Buddha do if he were alive today? Like, would he be on TikTok, doing Instagram? He'd probably give a big TED talk. He'd write a bunch of books, have a big TikTok. This is so funny. I should do like a thing on this and make this a viral video. All right, don't steal this from me, Harry. And he might run a company. He'd probably run a company. The Dalai Lama is basically running a company, right? Where he's coordinating, giving talks everywhere, and organizing events. And he has a big temple that someone is running. So, yeah, I guess it's a way with which to share and spread information.
I mean, I'd imagine that he would have lots of people commenting on him without him actually running anything, is my guess. My guess is he'd go around and share such insightful and inspiring thoughts that everyone else would be talking about him without him needing to make specific mention to it. That would be my guess.
Oh, I mean, someone's just filming him and he's doing his TikTok. I like how we're now discussing the Buddha in 2023. I don't know though. Deepak Chopra, a wonderful teacher of meditation, he is frigging involved in his business. Like I will
Yeah,
send
he
him
is.
a text him. He responds himself within 60 seconds. So look, a lot of us in this world, myself included, would probably, like I said, yeah, we'd love to just meditate all day. Maybe we hold out a bucket for rice with kimchi or some kombucha or whatever we have it with in 2023. But maybe talking to you, maybe that is my path, our path. Can I hold that mindfulness and live ethically in line with all the Buddhist principles while doing the absolute sausage factory of running a company?
What we teach, or one of the things that we teach that's been really impactful to participants has been this idea of maintaining 2/3 of your awareness on the center of your chest, while a third of your awareness out in the world doing what you're doing. Take it, steal it, whatever. That's fine. I want people to hear this message, because when you're able to maintain a sense of presence in everything which you're doing and in every action that you're taking, then you're not going to have those triggers come up, because the majority of your awareness is still within. The majority of your awareness is still on what's coming up for you, and whatever's outside is just something that you're interacting with. Have you? Is that similar to what your experience has been since you've been doing all this, the Vipassanas, and since you've been traveling around the world and learning meditation, now teaching meditation? Is that what you're referring to? Even while you're running a business, or what you refer to as the sausage factory, even as you're running it, you're still attempting to be centered or aligned with your center, I think was the new age term you used.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not a very new agey. I don't know how I ended up using this language with you. It's fascinating. I haven't heard the language that you're using around it, but that is the practice, right? That is the path. Let's take family out. Jack Kornfield says, if you think you're enlightened, try spending a week with your family. I think that might be next level. That's like the ultimate, like maybe millimeter away from enlightenment. You can handle your family 100% of the time and mind the gap. I think in terms of running a company, leaning in on whatever your career is, yeah, there's this dance. I used to study with another guru in India who would talk about Leela. Like she was actually talking about this dance of feminine, masculine energy, and the feminine and the masculine. Maybe there's this dance between the real world business stuff that we have to contend with and holding your values 1,000%. And that I think I perceive an almost flawless on. I'm not perfect, but I definitely hold my values. The company is 100%, 100% aligned on values. No lying, no stealing, no killing, like living this by precepts. But can you find yourself not even having kind of low level triggers throughout the day, like when people are doing things that you might not do? Yeah, that's the practice. That is the
I think
practice.
I think I've heard Dalai Lama even reference that if he stubs his toe, he's still gonna swear that whatever he stubbed his toe on. But that just comes down to the sutra of the two arrows, right? The first arrow hits you, that there's nothing you can do about that one. The second arrow is how you choose to respond. And this is really cool, because like from this conversation, if someone's listening to this, they're probably going, okay, cool. Meditation, if they haven't tried it already, or if they haven't already learned it, meditation could be really helpful for me. This could be really cool. What's some of the main pushback that you get when you approach corporates, for example, you approach individuals and you're like, hey, you should learn meditation. You should teach your staff meditation. Let's bring this amazing skill and this amazing gift to them. What's the main pushback you get?
So I don't do that. We run a beautiful retreat called Mela once a year. And if someone is not interested in coming, then they
They
shouldn't
just
come.
don't come.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
no, please don't come, actually. Because the people, it's so special. It's like stepping into love, but not in a weird, I don't want to say weird, new agey, not in a new age way. It's amazing people. I mean, it's really powerful business leaders, people creative fields, people running nonprofits, authors, activists, people really leaning in on with whatever impact they want to have in the art world, crypto, whatever it is. And if you don't really want to be there, then please don't come. And I will not talk you into coming. Or teacher training program, that would be different. Maybe someone that doesn't necessarily want to go through that training, no, that I probably do talk people into because it's such a beautiful process to learn this Buddhist wisdom. It is so impactful to your actual physical daily life that I do talk people into doing that, knowing that both Mela and that teacher training program will change the life of everyone who joins. It will change their life, even 3.5 days of that Mela retreat. In terms of people not interested in meditation, I don't think I've ever talked to anyone. I don't think now, when we first started the path, I would try to talk people into it. Now I don't, and just look at them, because actually there's some power in saying, okay, cool. What else we're interested in? And tell you about
do you run kind of like corporate sessions or keynote speaks?
Yeah, but we don't pitch for it. So people, it's incoming. We just had someone from the probably most famous hotel brand ask us about leading meditations for their properties. So we accept the incoming, but I'm not out there pitching it. But of course, in my daily life, I will meet people who say, oh, I meditate while I'm biking. I'm like, oh, so you bike? No, I meditate when I'm biking. And I have to ask, because I'm a brat at heart. No, I'm just joking. But I'll say, oh, so if I think about biking when I meditate, am I biking? No, you're thinking. I'm like, okay, so you're biking. Anyway, so yeah, I get that. So in my daily life, of course, I'll meet people who say, I don't want to meditate. But I think that's fine, actually. Not everyone needs to meditate. And I'm not in a business, even with the path, where I'm trying to talk anyone into meditation. Come to us when you want to learn, because we will do it and make it fun and beautiful and put you into community. But if you don't want to do it, then yeah, don't do it. I don't need you to do it. But so if I were talking to someone who didn't want to, yeah, I would probably tell them just don't. I'm a pretty good. My trigger is around not wanting to be around wanting to be listened to. So I think I'm a pretty good listener for other people. So if they're like, they say I don't want to meditate, be like, okay, cool. So
okay, I won't make you listen. Yeah, great. I won't make you learn. So how have you built up your business then? If that's kind of the sales approach, is like, when you're ready, come to us. Like, how have you built up the path up till today?
Well, so Mela has been very organic. I would love to invite people in your community to join us. You do a quick application where you talk a bit about yourself and where you want to have impact or have impact, whatever that is, whether it's writing or running a company or running a nonprofit or whatever it is. It's very diverse in terms of the fields, academics, government, etc. But we want to know, what are you passionate about? And it's life-changing for people. So the best marketing we can do is to have people come, and then they come back, and literally people look different. They literally look different. So it's probably that different.
Do you take photos before and after?
I know. I actually thought about doing that. We should do that. Sort of like, yeah, because it's probably what you're seeing or experience from. That's funny that you watched old videos of me, but it's just that lack of tension that's probably there in my face. So yeah, the best marketing for that is having the people that come right after. We realized we had to do it right after the retreat. We had to get a testimonial with that, which we have not done a great job at. So get a testimonial of them on video and written, and then have them nominate 5 people right when they get back. That's great. And we'll start to do some PR, and especially maybe target the venture capital communities, my old startup world, people in film and fashion, other industries that I kind of touched in my startup world. I'm trying to think. I don't know. Probably not enough. I don't know. How's that for an answer? The teacher training, we need to do a better job of highlighting how much of a focus of community we have. So I'm a 100% community person, a very people person. Maybe that's the antidote to the little rejected, nerdy me at 9 years old, bullied so badly as a kid, is that I want everyone to feel really welcomed and surrounded by kind people who are happy to have them there. So we should probably do a better job telling people that I think we have the only meditation teacher training program, I think, in the world that it's online so people can join from anywhere in the world, but it's live. In fact, I need to go to it in about a minute because we're live now, or we're about to be live in 9 minutes, and I need to tell the teachers that I'm going to be coming. So it's live, and we have amazing teachers, but we have small classes, and it really becomes a sangha. It becomes a community. People meet friends for life in our meditation teacher training program, and I think all of the other ones are either videos that are just on demand. So maybe you do practice meditations once a week or once a month, but the classes are just you watching videos anytime. And then it's a small class size. It's only 20 people or 24 people. And you get to know everyone at the beginning of class. We do one-on-ones. You kind of get to know all your classmates. And you're all in the chat and supporting each other. And then we put people in pods. So if you're doing a practice guiding at the end of class, you'll have 3 other people in your pod that will give you feedback, and then someone else will guide and you'll give feedback. And so, the people in those pods become friends for life. So we need to probably more stress how much of a community focus there is. But we've been doing this teacher training for a long time. So I think, how do we build the business? I think honestly, Google helps. We haven't done a heck of a lot on the SEO side, but meditation teacher training, we're one of the programs that has probably been out there the longest in the world. So over time, maybe the angels of Google help us. It's funny, you're asking me to say how we've been successful, and I'm tempted to say, here's what we should do more. Well, I need to think about that. But I should probably jump because I'm actually joining our teacher training program that is about to start. It really is live. We have people from all over the world in it. We even have a venture capitalist in it, which is great. And that's one of the things that I love, is that I think one of the things we've been successful with is being very open to all genders, all backgrounds, and that includes people that are investment bankers or venture capitalists or entrepreneurs. I really dreamed of creating environment, a company, a class, everything we do that's very welcoming for people. And I think part of it is also not using new age language. Like, I talk like a human being. I need to go on and
you got to go. Okay.
Class. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see if we can do a part 2. Thank you, Dina, for sharing your journey and your knowledge and your wisdom so far. Really appreciated it.
Thank you. It's been amazing. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and thank you for great questions.
Okay, so that was an amazing conversation with Dina. We were looking at how she defined success, and from the tech world and business world, her dad was a Harvard business professor. And all of his colleagues, and that's kind of just the world that she lived in. She basically led a startup for 7 years. She had a lot of external success, but she was a mess. And she learned that there's more than one type of currency in the world. Her dad taught her that. She had a lot of wealth, but she didn't have money. So she had social impact. She had influence, I guess you can call it, political influence as well. And there's a reason why she was one of the most influential women in the world as well, especially in the US. And she was ranked that from multiple people who identified. And basically, she found that she needs to have more peacefulness in your own skin. You got to be in your flow. You got to just be happy to be you. You got to be vibrating as yourself. She said that now she's just living life. She's hard to pin down. This conversation with her was really hard to pin down. There was multiple reschedules and multiple emails and back and forths to make sure that it was going to happen. And we explored what meditation actually is. And at its core, it's being present and separate from the things which are triggering you. She said you get hot or you get swept up, you get really triggered by things. But if you learn to just pause at the gap or mind the gap, and you manage to just be able to pause when something's coming up because you're noticing it, well, that's what meditation's teaching you. She says that meditating, the actual practice of meditation, is literally changing your brain. Literally, fMRI studies have shown it. You don't have to do X amount of meditation throughout the day. You don't necessarily even need to do all the other things you're trying to do in order to change your mind. You can literally, meditating every day changes your brain. And so she shared that for herself, she has a trigger, a key trigger from when she was young, that people don't hear her, and she'd flip out on someone if they don't listen, right? Like, she says she needs something by 5 and they don't have it by 5, and should completely flip out on them. And she's now learned that through meditation, she's been able to have more empathy and more compassion. She's been successful at being herself. She said that she was able to go back to COO again of what was a very successful tech startup that should hire excellent people beneath her to handle her emails and to handle the team, but she didn't. She was too people pleasing. She feared people bullying her. She didn't hire people because of it. She needed people to like her, and so she wasn't being her authentic self. She wasn't being her. And so what she focused on, what she's started focusing on is, yes, teaching meditation teachers how to teach meditation, but she's also shared that a strategy for Mela, she referred to build up these meditation retreats is just very organic. The people who want to come, they'll reach out. There's word of mouth, and it's just people want to pursue their passions. And then they get people to nominate who's actually going to attend, and then film the testimonials right after, right? They're doing all these things, but she doesn't feel like she needs to be operating in a sausage factory per se. So very similar to the way that we teach meditation at Purpose Advisory and Meditate with Purpose, the way that we teach, she's very much aligned. You need to have a practice which works. You need to be able to make sure that this practice influences your life positively, right? She referenced that one of her friends swore at her, saying, "You're so bloody," no, whatever the swear word was, that you're so compassionate, and frustrated by her compassion ultimately, because she was just having more empathy for others. She was able to find more compassion for others. So if your meditation is able to do those two things, and then she was referring to the Sangha, you've got to make sure that you have an amazing community. If you don't have the community, you're not going to be able to stick with it. It's not going to be amazing or beautiful to learn from. Yes, you can get the knowledge from people, but unless you're in a community, it becomes very challenging to apply that knowledge as a form of wisdom. So if you're wanting to learn meditation, you've been watching this, and you've been listening to it, and this, along with the episodes with Henry Shukman and maybe Rajan as well, and Jai Kith, which was episode 3. And if you're talking about compassion, and you've got James Kirby, and if you're talking about how this applies within your life and where you're able to take action, you can listen to Vin Jiang and you can listen to Matthew Elliott. There are lots of people on here who are teaching the power of meditation in their own lives. Josh Comer even shared that the difference between goals and intentions. And there's so much evidence from all of these mentorship conversations that if you want to finally learn meditation, just go and do it. Find it from one of these amazing teachers I've shared with you, from us, from somewhere else online, someone that you resonate with, because learning this skill of mindfulness can really change your life. And I hope that you've been able to see that from this conversation with Dina as well. So I hope you received a whole lot of value from engaging in that conversation. What were the key takeaways for you? What can you schedule in your life right now to make sure that the time you just invested into listening to this exceptional conversation with this amazing mentor and this amazing individual is time that wasn't misused, but was time that you've allocated properly to enhancing your life and improving it? Whatever it is, schedule it now, practice it now, be the successful person you're meant to be, live with purpose.